How fast are you ready to shoot when you pull your camera out of your bag? I don't know about you, but when I am ready to shoot a session and I am with my subject in front of me, I hate having to fumble with my gear. It misses opportunities, it looks unprofessional, and it just wastes time. So any advantage I can get on my pregame routine to make this ready to go the second I pull it out of my bag will make 1,000% improvement in my session. I'm gonna help you develop a routine to get your camera set, ready to shoot almost instantly as soon as you pull it out of your bag. Let's get started. Simplification and planning is the key to be ready that first second when you pull your camera out. And unfortunately, for the camera to be ready when you pull it out of your bag, it's got to be set up when you put it into your bag. It's a chore, I know, it's not fun. But if you set your camera up properly when you put it to bed, the next time you pull it out and don't miss that shot, you'll be glad you did it. My pre-game routine for my camera is designed for portraits or people photography, but once you watch these tips, I'm sure you can adapt it if you do a different kind of photography. So the first thing that I do in my setup routine before putting my camera away is I make sure that there are a few things that are turned off. The first thing I make sure is turned off on my camera when I put it away is continuous autofocus. Now for me, I seldom use this mode, so it's not often that I actually have to turn it off, but sometimes I do. And boy, I'll tell you, I've pulled my camera and if I leave it in continuous autofocus, it really aggravates me and wastes time when I go to use my camera again. And when you're working with a portrait subject, if you get a little bit annoyed, it has an effect on your subject. So you want everything to go really smoothly. Okay, there's a caveat to this. When if you are a sports shooter, it's the opposite. You probably do use continuous autofocus, and that would be your 80% setting, and you would want to leave it on. Okay, so another thing I make sure is set right when I put the camera away is the image profile. Now, with modern cameras, and mirrorless especially, the image profile is sort of like your viewfinder. It's how you see the subject. You're not looking through glass anymore with a mirrorless, so the camera's interpretation is your viewfinder. I'm plain vanilla when it comes to my camera profiles, but as you know, I do shoot a lot of black and white. So I use the standard profile and for color and the standard monochrome. It doesn't look the way the finished image is gonna look, but I got used to how those profiles look. Again, this is all about speed. You want simplification to be able to use your camera quickly. So I have only two profiles I'm gonna be looking at. One for color, one for black and white. And I'll make sure that black and white is turned off before I put that camera away, because that one really ticks me off when I come out black and white and I wasn't intending to shoot it. Just me, but again, all of these little things help you put yourself in a good mental state, ready to shoot fast. Okay, if you have in-body stabilization IBIS and you shoot with a tripod, you may want to make sure that IBIS is turned off when you put your camera away. Once again, the opposite's true. If you don't use a tripod, it's your default on setting. You're gonna want in-body stabilization. I don't have IBIS in my camera, so it's not really an issue, but IBIS tries to hunt sometimes in cameras that I've used that have it. So if the camera's on sticks, just one less thing for the camera to be trying to do while you're trying to work. So if you work on tripod, make sure IBIS is turned off when you put your camera away, or if you always shoot handheld, make sure it's turned on. Okay, this one, if you're a wedding photographer, you've probably already thought of this, but if you shoot weddings or events, you want to make sure beeps, all of them, are turned off on your camera. You sneak into a church, it's quiet, they're having their ceremony, beep, 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 auto. No, you don't want it. I sure don't want it. I don't really care about it too much in portrait sessions, but I make sure it's turned off. Your mileage may vary, but if it's something you think may distract you or distract your subject, I would turn it off before you put your camera away. Okay, let's talk about a few other things you may want to do to set your camera up. Now, I've recently kind of changed something that I do. I used to never have, or I used to always take lenses off the camera body when I put it away. But then I realized that I'm using one particular lens, as you've seen in some other videos, 70% of the time. So I'm like, why are you really taking this off? This is your 70% lens. So, man, if the camera's set right and the lens is on, bang, I'm completely ready to go. So I have been leaving this particular lens, the one I use 70% of the time, on the camera. Once again, your mileage may vary. You may not have a particular lens that you use all the time. But if you do, I would suggest finding a way to leave it on there. It's just one less thing to slow you down and offset your mood when you're ready to shoot and you're trying to catch a great image. A little bit about modes. I 98% of the time shoot manual, so I'm going to set the camera in manual. There are times I change and use AV or whatever, especially at events. Let's talk about ISO. You may not think you can set an ISO coming out of the box, so to speak, but if you think about it, you probably can, unless you just shoot wildly different things every time. I'm pretty consistent in the kind of stuff I shoot for my work, so I don't really have a wild ISO range. So what I do is I set my camera at 200 when I put it away. Now, 200 or 250 is what I shoot in the studio, so it's pretty much set. Outdoors, I really seldom go over 400, between 400 and 800, unless I'm shooting really late or really early. I try not to shoot really early, but if I'm shooting really late, sometimes I'll have to up the ISO, but that's a pretty close range. I always try to avoid shooting in the middle of the day, so it's not often I would have to come down to 100. So 200 is kind of my 70% solution when I looked at the kind of work I do. You can go as far as f-stop and shutter speed. Again, I may be more consistent in what I shoot than you, but think about it. Look at what you do. You've heard in other videos that I do not often shoot wide open. It's very rare. So the range I'm usually working in is between 5, 6, and 8 outside, and maybe sometimes 11 in the studio. I'm coming back down to more towards 8. So if I set my f-stop at 5, 6 when I put the camera away, I'm only 1 or 2 stops away. Wow, that was old. We don't change f-stops that way anymore, do we? If I set my f-stop at 5.6, I'm only 1 or 2 stops away from where I could wind up being. Again, really quick. I'm close to ready. Same thing with shutter speed. If I'm shooting portraits or people, very rarely do I want to go below 1/60th of a second. In fact, I like it a little bit faster, even if I'm shooting on sticks. So I put my camera away at 1/80th. And again, unless the light goes down low, 1/80th is good. In studio, I shoot at 1/125th. So again, I'm within 1 stop. All these are little things, and you're like, man, all of this sounds pretty common sense. I'm like, it is pretty common sense until you don't do it. And you have to do 15 different settings on your camera before you're ready to take one shot. It makes a difference that your camera, once you shoot a lot, as you get very experienced or very used to what you do in photography, that camera is a part of your hands. And when it's kind of a teammate and working with you, it feels good. It's like it's there. And it's a routine like any other routine, but I think it's a routine that you'll get a lot out of if you try it. You may not. You may say I'm crazy. I hope you've gotten something out the video. Give it a try and see how you feel when you pull that camera out the bag next time and you're ready to shoot within 30 seconds. Until the next video, cheers.